Rachel sat at the round table in the middle of the glittering restaurant, her back straight, her smile polite. Chandeliers sparkled above her head. The waiters moved like shadows with trays of wine, and the soft music played in the background. Everything around her looked perfect, but inside she felt small. Daniel, her husband, sat at her side, relaxed, confident, as if nothing was wrong. Across from her were his parents, dressed in expensive clothes, carrying themselves with the same air of superiority they always did. From the moment they sat down, the comments began. Daniel's father leaned back in his chair and asked her if she had ever eaten in a place this fine before. His mother chuckled and added, "I hope you don't feel out of place, dear. We know you're used to simpler things." They smiled as if it were a joke, but the sting was sharp. Rachel pressed her lips together and gave a small laugh, pretending it didn't bother her. All through the meal, they spoke over her. When she tried to join the conversation, Daniel's father would interrupt, correcting her or turning to Daniel instead. "You really should let Daniel handle such matters," he said at one point, after she mentioned her thoughts about the economy. He was raised for this world. His words carried the same message she had heard since the beginning. She did not belong here. The food arrived, rich and beautiful on the plates, but Rachel hardly tasted it. She focused on keeping her face calm, her shoulders steady. Every remark cut into her, but she refused to let them see her break. Daniel, sitting beside her, said little. Once in a while he gave her hand a light squeeze under the table, but he never spoke up for her. His silence hurt more than the insults. Halfway through the meal, Daniel's mother leaned forward, her eyes sharp, her smile thin. "You know, Rachel," she said in a voice soft enough to sound polite but loud enough to sting, "if it weren't for my son, you'd still be nobody. He gave you a name, a place, a life. Without him, you'd have nothing." Rachel froze. The glass in her hand trembled, the wine rippling against the rim. For a moment, she felt her heart pounding so hard it echoed in her ears. Her cheeks burned with humiliation, but she forced her eyes up, meeting her mother-in-law's gaze. Behind the calm smile she wore, a spark lit in her eyes, small but fierce. The table grew quiet. Daniel cleared his throat, shifting uncomfortably, but Rachel said nothing. She placed her glass carefully back on the table, her hand steadying itself with quiet determination. Her silence was not weakness. It was strength she was holding back, strength no one at that table yet understood. Why did she endure this treatment? Why didn't she walk away, throw the insults back, or break down? Something deeper held her in place, something she carried inside. A secret, a plan, a promise to herself. And though Daniel's family thought they had crushed her spirit, they had no idea what fire they had just awakened. Rachel grew up in a hard-working but poor family. Her father was a mechanic who spent long hours in the small workshop by the roadside, and her mother sold fruits and vegetables in the local market. They had little, but they gave her the best they could. Rachel was smart, quick to learn, and always hungry for knowledge. From a young age, she dreamed of a life beyond the struggles she saw every day. In school, she often stood out. She wasn't just intelligent, she was ambitious. She wanted more than survival. She wanted to build something of her own. But people rarely believed in her. Teachers admired her intelligence but reminded her that girls like you should think about safe jobs, not big dreams. Neighbors whispered that her family could never afford to send her far in life. Even some of her relatives thought she was too bold for her background. Rachel did not give up. She earned a scholarship to study business at a top university. It was her chance to prove herself. At school, she worked harder than most, often balancing her studies with part-time jobs just to cover living costs. While others went to parties, Rachel stayed up late sketching ideas, writing plans, and dreaming of building her own fashion brand one day. Clothes fascinated her, not just for their beauty, but for the confidence they gave people. She wanted to design pieces that told stories of strength and identity. It was during these years that she met Daniel. He was everything she wasn't: handsome, confident, and born into wealth. His family owned businesses, lived in large houses, and traveled often. Rachel never thought someone like him would notice her, but Daniel was drawn to her authenticity. She was not impressed by his money, and she spoke with honesty and warmth that he rarely found in his social circle. Slowly, their friendship grew into something more. Daniel loved her simplicity and her determination. He told her often that she was different from the women he had dated before. Where others wanted his lifestyle, Rachel wanted her own dreams. They fell in love, but not everyone was happy about it. Daniel's parents were furious. To them, Rachel was beneath him. She had no name, no wealth, no family connections. His mother once told him, "She will drag you down, Daniel. Marry a woman who can stand beside you, not one who needs to be lifted." Despite the opposition, Daniel chose Rachel. But the choice came with a price. His parents insisted that before the marriage, Rachel must sign a strict prenuptial agreement. She would get nothing if the marriage ended. No share of his wealth, no claim to his family businesses. The message was clear. They didn't trust her. Rachel was hurt but not broken. She signed the papers without hesitation. To her, marriage was not about money, and she didn't want to be seen as someone marrying for gain. Quietly, she made herself a promise. One day, she would succeed on her own, and no one would ever be able to call her nobody again. The early years of the marriage were peaceful. Daniel was supportive, and Rachel began to focus on her fashion dream. She started small, a few sketches, a rented workspace, and a sewing machine. It wasn't easy. Investors turned her down, saying she lacked experience. Customers came slowly, and some months she struggled to pay her staff. But she kept going, determined to build her brand step by step. Daniel's career, meanwhile, was steady. He worked in one of his family's companies, managing projects that kept him busy but stable. His parents remained cold to Rachel, often making remarks about her little fashion shop. They pretended to smile in public, but treated her with dismissal in private. At family gatherings, they never asked about her work, only about Daniel's. They reminded her of the prenup whenever they could, as if to say, "You have nothing here." Still, Rachel endured. She smiled, stayed graceful, and refused to let their words break her spirit. Every insult only fueled her desire to succeed. Her fashion line was not famous yet, but she believed in it. She believed in herself. In quiet moments, when no one was watching, Rachel whispered her dream like a prayer. One day, her name would stand on its own. And though no one around her knew it, that day was closer than anyone expected. Rachel's fashion line suddenly exploded. It happened on a day she would never forget. A famous actress was spotted at an award show wearing one of her designs. A simple but elegant gown Rachel had worked on for weeks. The actress mentioned Rachel's name in an interview, saying, "I love supporting fresh talent. This dress is from a young designer, Rachel Adams. She's amazing." By the next morning, Rachel's world had changed. Her brand's social media pages flooded with messages. Thousands of new followers, hundreds of orders, and countless calls from people wanting her designs. Fashion blogs praised her style, calling it unique and refreshing. Reporters wanted interviews. Influencers begged to wear her clothes. Rachel's tiny workshop, once quiet and struggling, became the center of attention. In just a few months, investors who once ignored her started offering money. Some wanted to buy her brand, others wanted to partner with her. She carefully chose the right deals, protecting her vision while accepting support to grow. Her small fashion startup grew into a company. She hired more staff, expanded her designs, and moved into a bigger office. The success was unbelievable. Within a short time, Rachel was making more money than Daniel's entire family combined. Her designs appeared on red carpets, in magazines, and on TV shows. The media called her a self-made woman and the rising star of fashion. Articles celebrated her journey from a poor background to international success. For the first time, Rachel felt the world truly saw her worth. Daniel's parents were the first to change their tune. The same people who once mocked her little fashion shop now smiled sweetly whenever they saw her. His mother, who once said she was nobody, now told people proudly, "That's my daughter-in-law, Rachel. We always knew she was special." His father often invited her to business dinners, pretending to admire her intelligence. They acted as if they had supported her from the beginning, as though they had always believed in her. Rachel saw through their false kindness, but she stayed polite. She knew their sudden love was not for her but for her success. Still, she carried herself with grace, knowing that her silence spoke louder than their lies. At home, things grew more complicated. Daniel at first was happy for her. He congratulated her, told her how proud he was, and shared in her joy. But as the months passed, something shifted. Rachel was always busy. Her name was everywhere. and people praised her more than him. Slowly, Daniel began to grow distant. He no longer asked much about her work. Sometimes, when she excitedly shared good news, he only gave a half smile. The real storm came one night when Rachel returned home earlier than expected. As she stepped into the hallway, she heard voices coming from the living room. She paused, noticing Daniel's parents were visiting. The tone of their conversation was low, almost secretive. "She has everything now," his father's voice said. "If she decides to divorce, she walks away with it all. That prenup must be revisited. We cannot let her empire remain outside the family." Rachel's heart froze. She leaned closer, careful not to make a sound. "She won't agree to change it," Daniel whispered. His voice was tight, almost guilty. "That's why we have to be smart," his mother replied. "There are lawyers who can prove the prenup is invalid. Maybe she signed it under pressure. Maybe she hid things. We will find a way. Daniel, this is about your future. If you let her keep all this power, where does that leave you?" Rachel's hands trembled as she held her bag. She had always known they didn't accept her, but hearing them plan to cut her out of her own success cut deep. What shocked her most was Daniel's silence. He didn't defend her. He didn't say no. Instead, he sat there, listening to them plot against the woman he once claimed to love. She stepped back quietly, her mind racing. The victory she had worked so hard for now came with a price she had never imagined. She realized the battle ahead was not about building her dream anymore. It was about protecting it. Once supportive, Daniel began resenting Rachel's success. At first, he smiled when the world praised her, but slowly, the pride turned into bitterness. He came home from work with a heavy face, no longer eager to hear her news. When Rachel shared her victories, a big contract signed, another celebrity wearing her designs, his answers grew shorter. "That's nice," he would mutter, without looking up. His coldness spread into their daily life. He complained that she was too busy, that she spent more time on her brand than with him. He accused her of changing and acting too important. Rachel was shocked. "Daniel," she whispered one evening, "I haven't changed. I'm still me. I'm just finally living my dream." But instead of celebrating with her, he turned away, muttering that she was leaving him behind. The pressure from his parents only made things worse. They never stopped reminding him that the prenup was dangerous. "If she divorces you, she takes everything," his father said again and again. His mother added, "She may love you now, but love fades. Protect yourself before it's too late." Their words poisoned Daniel's heart. He became suspicious, asking Rachel about her meetings, about the people she worked with, as though she had something to hide. Rachel felt the change deeply. The man who once held her hand through storms now stood with his family against her. The loneliness was heavier than she expected. She had built her empire. Yet in her own home she felt small, betrayed, and unwanted. Nights that should have been filled with love turned into silence or arguments. Their fights grew louder as weeks passed. "You don't care about this marriage anymore," Daniel shouted one night. "That's not true," Rachel argued, her voice breaking. "I have always cared. I worked hard because I wanted us to have a better life, not worse." "You've made me look weak," he snapped. "The world praises you, and I'm just your shadow." Rachel stared at him, hurt. "I never wanted you to feel that way. You are my husband. I thought we were a team." But Daniel only shook his head, anger clouding his face. The tension bled into everything. Meals were eaten in silence. The warmth of their home faded. Rachel, who once looked at him with love, now felt a distance she could not bridge. In her pain, she turned to her best friend, Anita. One evening, they sat in Rachel's office sipping tea. Anita listened carefully as Rachel poured her heart out. "They're trying to destroy me," Rachel whispered. "His parents. And now even Daniel. I feel like I'm sleeping beside a stranger." Anita reached across the table and took her hand. "Rachel, you have to protect yourself. Don't ignore the signs. If they're talking about breaking the prenup, it means they're planning something. You need a lawyer, someone who will fight for you." Rachel shook her head, tears forming. "I don't want to fight my husband. I loved him. I thought he loved me too." Anita's voice was gentle but firm. "Love is not supposed to hurt like this. You built everything with your own hands. Don't let them take it away. And don't let him make you feel like you're less because you succeeded." Those words stayed with Rachel. That night, she lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling while Daniel slept beside her. Her mind turned over and over. She wondered if their marriage had ever truly been about love, or if Daniel had only wanted a woman who made him feel powerful. Was she supposed to shrink herself just to keep him happy? Should she throw away everything she had worked for so he wouldn't feel insecure? Or should she stand tall, even if it meant standing alone? Days turned into weeks, and the house became a battlefield. Sometimes Daniel softened, apologizing after an argument, holding her hand and saying, "I'm sorry, I just feel left out." But before long, the anger returned, fed by his parents' whispers. Rachel's heart broke a little more each time. The betrayal was not only from his family. She could almost forgive them because she had never expected their kindness. But Daniel? He had been her partner, her safe place, her love. Now he was the sharpest knife in her back. Still, deep inside her, Rachel knew something had to change. She could not continue living in a marriage that drained her, with people who wanted to strip her of everything. She stood at a crossroads, torn between two painful choices. Hold on to a toxic marriage that was killing her spirit, or let go, walk away, and prove once again that she was strong enough to stand on her own. And as her heart ached with that decision, she knew one thing for certain. The woman who once signed a prenup with quiet dignity was no longer the same. She was stronger now, and she would not let anyone break her again. Rachel discovered the truth by accident. One evening, while Daniel was out, she went into his study to look for a notebook she had left there. As she opened a drawer, her eyes fell on a brown envelope. Curiosity pulled her closer. Inside were legal documents, thick with pages, covered in words that made her heart sink. Her hands shook as she read. They were papers drafted by lawyers. Daniel's family had secretly hired them to argue that the prenup was invalid. The documents claimed Rachel had signed under pressure, that she had hidden assets, that she had tricked Daniel into marriage. Lies. All lies. Her chest tightened, but she did not cry. Instead, a cold calmness washed over her. She had suspected this day would come. She had lived too long under their cruelty, not to prepare herself. Quietly, Rachel put the papers back, locked the drawer, and left the room. But that night, as Daniel slept, she sat awake in the dark, her mind steady. If they wanted war, she would be ready. What no one knew was that Rachel had been documenting everything. Every insult his parents had thrown at her. Every conversation where they spoke about money. Every time Daniel pressured her under their influence. She had emails, recordings, and messages saved carefully. She had spoken to her own lawyers months before, after Anita's advice, and had quietly built a wall of protection around herself. The day finally came. Daniel's family filed a case in court, claiming the prenup was invalid. They entered the courtroom with confidence, their lawyers in sharp suits, their faces smug. Daniel sat beside them, his eyes dark with guilt but his lips sealed. His parents whispered to him, promising victory. Then the doors opened and Rachel walked in. She was not alone. Behind her came her legal team, strong and prepared. Her calm steps echoed in the room, and for the first time, Daniel's parents shifted uneasily in their seats. The case began. Daniel's lawyers painted Rachel as a manipulator, saying she had taken advantage of Daniel's love, that she married him for security, and that she had planned all along to trap him. They spoke of fabricated evidence, twisting stories to make her look guilty. Rachel sat still, her eyes steady. She waited. When it was her turn, her lawyer rose with quiet confidence. Piece by piece, they began to reveal the truth. They showed the recordings of Daniel's parents mocking her, admitting they forced her to sign the prenup. They produced emails where they spoke of finding ways to destroy her. They presented evidence that Rachel had started her brand with nothing but her own money, her own work, her own hands. The courtroom shifted. Whispers filled the air. Reporters scribbled furiously. The judge's eyes narrowed at the clear proof of manipulation. Rachel did not gloat. She did not smile. She only watched Daniel. He sat frozen, his face pale, his hands trembling. Every lie his family told crumbled. Every scheme fell apart. Finally, the judge's voice cut through the room. The prenuptial agreement stands. The claims of fraud are baseless. This court recognizes Rachel Adams as the rightful owner of her business and assets. Gasps filled the room. Daniel's parents slumped in their seats, their faces burning with shame. The victory was complete, but the most painful moment was not for them. It was for Daniel. He looked at Rachel, his eyes full of regret, as though he had just realized what his silence and weakness had cost him. He had allowed his family to destroy the love he once shared with her. Rachel met his gaze one last time. Her eyes carried both heartbreak and strength. There was no anger now, only clarity. She had loved him, trusted him, but that love had been crushed under betrayal. She stood, lifted her chin, and walked out of the courtroom with her lawyers by her side. The flashes of cameras followed her. The sound of questions filled the air, but she felt none of it. Inside her chest, there was pain, but also freedom. For the first time in years, she was no longer fighting to be accepted. She was no longer begging to be seen. She had proved herself, not just to the world, not just to his family, but to herself. And though Daniel's eyes followed her as she left, filled with regret, Rachel did not look back. The chapter was closed. Rachel won the legal battle. The judge's ruling was final. The prenup stood firm, and her empire remained untouched. The lies, the tricks, and the schemes of Daniel's family had collapsed before everyone's eyes. Reporters called her victory a triumph of strength and truth. Strangers praised her for standing tall. But when Rachel stepped out of the courtroom, she did not feel like a conqueror. She felt like a woman who had lost something dear, yet saved herself in the process. The marriage she once believed in was broken beyond repair. The love she had given Daniel was real, but it had not been enough to protect her from betrayal. And so Rachel made a choice. She would no longer live under the shadow of people who never wanted her. She packed her things, left Daniel's house, and moved into a new penthouse overlooking the city skyline. It was her own space, bought with her own money. For the first time, she felt light, free from the weight of Daniel's silence and his family's cruelty. Some nights she cried quietly, mourning the love that could have been. But each morning she rose stronger, ready to keep moving forward. Rachel poured her energy back into her brand. She expanded her company, opening new branches and launching collections that sold out within days. But more than success, she wanted to give back. She remembered the struggles of her own past, the poverty, the doubt, the loneliness of being underestimated. She began hiring women from similar backgrounds. Single mothers, young girls with talent but no money, and women who had been told they would never succeed. She gave them training, jobs, and confidence. Her company became not just a business, but a home for women who needed a second chance. Magazines wrote about her journey, calling her a symbol of self-made success. She was invited to speak at events, to inspire others with her story. Rachel did not boast. She spoke simply, always reminding people that strength is born from struggle, and that no one should let others define their worth. Meanwhile, Daniel's world grew smaller. At first, he tried to believe that things would go back to normal, that Rachel would return to him after the storm. But weeks turned into months, and she never looked back. His parents, ashamed by the public scandal, withdrew from the spotlight. The family that once stood so proudly above others now faced whispers and judgment. Daniel sat alone many nights, replaying the choices he had made. He remembered the woman who once looked at him with love, the woman who had never cared for his money, who had believed in him when no one else did. She had stood by his side even when his parents mocked her. But instead of defending her, he let their poison fill his heart. Now Rachel was stronger than ever, while he was left behind. He realized too late what he had lost. Not her wealth, not her empire, but the one woman who had loved him for who he was, not what he owned. Regret became his companion, a heavy weight he could not escape. Rachel, on the other hand, kept moving forward. Her heart was scarred, but it was steady. She had chosen herself, her dignity, her peace. And in doing so, she became more than just a successful woman. She became a reminder that no amount of betrayal could break a spirit that refused to be crushed. Rachel sat alone one evening, a glass of wine in her hand. The lights of the city sparkled through the wide windows of her penthouse. Cars moved like tiny stars on the roads below, and the hum of the night felt calm, almost comforting. She leaned back into her chair, her body relaxed but her mind alive with thoughts. It had been a long journey. Betrayal, pain, and heartbreak had tried to crush her spirit, but here she was, still standing. She thought of Daniel, of the way he had once been her safe place, then how he let his family's poison destroy their love. She thought of every insult his parents had thrown at her, every time they called her nothing, every time they made her feel like she didn't belong. For years, she carried that weight quietly. Now the weight was gone. Rachel closed her eyes for a moment and let the silence wrap around her. She was not just a survivor, she was free. Her empire was intact, her dignity untouched, her peace finally hers. She took a slow sip of her wine and whispered softly, almost to herself, "They treated me like nobody, but I was always somebody." The words felt powerful on her lips, like a truth she had always known deep inside. She smiled, not because of her wealth or fame, but because of her strength. She had walked through fire and had not burned. She had chosen herself, and that choice had given her more than money ever could. It had given her peace. The city glowed brighter outside, as if celebrating with her. And as Rachel sat there, calm and steady, it was clear the story of her life would not end with pain but with dignity, resilience, and the quiet victory of a woman who refused to be broken. Hi loves, thanks so much for staying till the end. Two hearts, don't forget to like, drop a comment, and subscribe for more stories. See you next time. Bye. Waving hand.